Comanche girl tied to a tree for wild beasts until a cowboy's bullet saved her life. The land was wide and open, stretching for miles, and it held both beauty and danger. Among the hills and valleys, a young Comanche girl named Ayana walked with her family. She was only 13, small but strong, with eyes as sharp as the hawks that flew above. Her hair was dark and braided neatly, her clothes made from soft animal hides, worn but carefully kept. Ayana loved the plains. She loved the smell of the earth after a rare rain, the sound of horses' hooves on the soft soil, and the quiet moments when the sun sank below the horizon, turning the sky into a painting of reds, oranges, and purples. She ran, laughed, and played among the tall grass with her friends and siblings. Life, though hard in the harsh land of the Southwest, had a rhythm, a sense of safety when she was with her family. That safety, however, would soon vanish. It happened quickly, faster than anyone could have imagined. One moment, Ayana was helping her mother gather herbs near the river. The next, a shadow moved in the distance. She noticed it first, the sound of hooves that were not her people's, loud and harsh, growing closer with frightening speed. Ayana froze, a strange sense of unease creeping up her spine. The adults shouted, warning each other, but the attackers were too many, too fast. They came from a rival group, a band that had long been hostile to her tribe. Before she could react, strong hands grabbed her. She struggled, kicking and screaming, but it was useless. The strangers were skilled, their faces hidden under cloths, their intentions cruel. Yana's heart pounded wildly in her chest, fear wrapping around her like a cold, heavy cloak. She saw her mother's face, twisted in desperation, calling out to her, and then everything was pulled away as she was carried off. The world shifted into chaos. The sound of shouting, horse hooves pounding, and the cries of children filled her ears. Her mind raced as she tried to understand what was happening. Why had this happened? Why her? The thought of never seeing her family again was unbearable. She closed her eyes tightly, trying to block out the noise, to hold on to hope. The captors brought her to a dry, rocky area far from her village. The land here was wild and empty, with sparse trees and jagged rocks. Ayana was forced to the ground and tied to a sturdy tree. The ropes cut into her wrists and ankles, leaving red marks that stung with every movement. The tree was old, its bark rough and unyielding, but it would be her prison for the next hours, or so it seemed. The attackers left her there, disappearing as quickly as they had come, leaving only the wind and the sounds of the wild. At first, Ayana was too scared to move, too scared to breathe. She hugged herself, trying to find comfort in the small space she could move. Her body ached from the ropes and her throat was dry from screaming and fear. She had never felt so alone in her life. Time passed slowly. The sun moved across the sky, its heat growing more intense. Ayana tried to focus on her breathing, trying to remember the lessons her father had taught her about staying calm in danger. "Fear is a shadow," he had once said. "It is real, but it does not have to control you." She repeated these words in her mind over and over like a song, clinging to them as if they could protect her. Around her, the world was alive with potential threats. She could hear the rustle of small animals in the grass, the distant roar of a mountain lion, and the soft, eerie whispers of the wind moving through the trees. Every sound made her jump. Her imagination ran wild, picturing the animals coming closer, circling her, waiting. She knew she had to stay alert, to watch for danger, even if her body felt weak and her mind screamed for escape. As the hours went on, the sun began its slow descent. The sky turned soft shades of pink and gold, and the shadows grew long across the plains. Yana's muscles ached from remaining tied in one place. She tried to wiggle her hands to find a way out, but the ropes were tight. Panic rose in her chest, threatening to overwhelm her. She took deep, shaky breaths, reminding herself that she had to stay strong. Crying, she realized, would not save her. She had to think. She had to survive. Yana began to remember the stories her grandmother had told her about the plains. Stories of courage, stories of children and women who had faced danger and lived to tell the tale. She thought of the eagle, strong and fearless, soaring above the land, seeing everything with clear eyes. She imagined herself as that eagle, powerful and free, even while tied to the tree. The image gave her strength, a spark of hope she refused to let go. As the first stars appeared in the sky, the wind began to cool. Night in the desert was always unpredictable. It could be peaceful and beautiful, or it could be dangerous and unforgiving. The temperature dropped, and Ayana shivered. She pulled her arms closer to her body, trying to conserve warmth. She whispered softly to herself, telling herself that help might come, that someone might see her, that her life was not over. Her mind drifted to her family again, to her mother's gentle hands, her father's firm voice, her little brother's laugh. She imagined them searching for her, calling her name through the plains, refusing to give up hope. This thought gave her a strange comfort, a feeling that she was not completely alone, even in the vast emptiness around her. Hours stretched into what felt like days. Every rustle of leaves or distant howl made her heart leap. She imagined the worst, yet she also imagined rescue. She pictured a kind stranger, a brave person riding across the plains who would see her tied there and help her escape. This thought, fragile but persistent, became her anchor. As the night deepened, Ayana's exhaustion grew. Her body was sore, her hands raw, and her mind tired from fear and worry. Yet she refused to give in. She closed her eyes briefly, imagining herself running freely through the grass, feeling the wind on her face, feeling the freedom she had known before. These small moments of imagination, small escapes in her mind, kept her sane. She noticed the sounds of the wild becoming more active. The howls of coyotes, the chirping of insects, the calls of owls filled the night air. Her eyes widened as she realized how exposed she truly was. The wild was beautiful, but it was also dangerous. She knew she had to be alert, to listen carefully, to watch for any movement. The fear in her chest remained, but she transformed it into focus. Despite the terror, Ayana's mind remained sharp. She observed everything: the direction of the wind, the movement of the grass, the sounds from the rocks nearby. She thought about what she could do if an animal came too close. Her survival instincts kicked in. She knew that if she stayed calm, stayed aware, she might just make it through the night. As the first hints of dawn appeared, painting the sky in soft oranges and blues, Ayana's hope grew stronger. The world was still alive, still moving, and she was still alive too. She had survived the first night, and that small victory filled her with a new determination. She whispered to herself, promising that she would not give up, that she would find a way to live, no matter what lay ahead. Though tied to the tree and surrounded by danger, Ayana's spirit was not broken. She was young, yes, but she was strong. She had already faced fear and uncertainty and had held on to hope. As the sun rose higher, spilling light across the plains, she waited, listening, watching, breathing, and believing. Somewhere in the vast wilderness, help might be coming. And she was ready to meet it. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ayana remained tied to the old tree, her wrists and ankles still chafed and sore from the rough ropes. The warmth of the morning brought some relief from the cold night, but it also reminded her that the day would be long, and danger could approach at any moment. She shifted slightly, careful not to tighten the ropes further, and tried to make herself as comfortable as possible. Comfort, she realized, was not a luxury she could afford. She needed her mind clear and alert. The plains around her stretched endlessly, golden grass waving in the morning breeze, dotted with rocks and scattered trees. From afar, the land looked peaceful, almost inviting. But Ayana knew better. The wilderness held many dangers, and she was exposed. Coyotes prowled nearby, birds of prey circled above, and snakes might slither unseen through the underbrush. Every sound made her heart jump. Every shadow seemed alive with potential threat. Yana took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She thought about what she could do to survive. The ropes were tight, but she tested them again carefully, trying to see if there was any way to loosen them. She wiggled her hands and pulled at the knots with all her strength, but they would not give. Frustration bubbled up inside her, but she forced herself to stay patient. Anger would not help. Only clear thinking and careful observation could save her. Hours passed slowly, the sun climbing to its highest point, beating down on the plains with a relentless heat. Yana's throat was dry, and she could feel her stomach growling. She had not eaten since the morning before her capture, and the lack of food made her feel weak. She closed her eyes for a moment and imagined the small meals her mother prepared: roasted corn, sweet berries, and fresh herbs. The memory made her stomach ache, but it also reminded her of the comfort of home and gave her strength to endure. Around midday, a sudden noise made her heart leap. A branch snapped nearby and she froze, her eyes scanning the tall grass for movement. Nothing appeared at first, but she could feel the presence of animals, or maybe humans, moving carefully through the land. She held her breath, wishing she could be invisible, hoping whatever it was would move on without noticing her. But it wasn't just the sounds of the wilderness that frightened her. Her mind played tricks on her, imagining shadows shifting into threatening shapes, making her heart pound even faster. She reminded herself that fear was natural and that she needed it to stay alert, but she also needed to control it, or it would consume her. Yana began counting silently in her head, 1, 2, 3, as a way to calm herself, to bring her focus back to the present moment. Time moved slowly. The shadows lengthened again as the sun began its descent in the afternoon sky. Yana felt exhaustion in every muscle. Her arms ached from the tight ropes, her back was sore from leaning against the tree, and her legs were stiff. She tried to shift slightly, careful not to hurt herself, and imagined the freedom of running through the plains again. That thought, small as it was, gave her a glimmer of hope that life might not end here, tied to this tree. In the silence between the sounds of the wind and animals, Yana remembered the lessons her elders had taught her. Her father had always said that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act even while afraid. Her grandmother had told stories of her ancestors, brave men and women who had faced impossible situations and survived. These stories were no longer just tales, they were guidance, a reminder that survival required patience, observation, and hope. Yana's eyes moved constantly, scanning the landscape. She noted every detail: the direction of the wind, the position of the sun, the sounds of distant wildlife. She imagined what she would do if a predator came close. She would stay calm, make herself small but watchful, ready to defend if necessary. The thought of wild animals circling her made her stomach churn, but it also sharpened her mind. Fear, she realized, could become a tool if controlled. The afternoon wore on, and the sun grew lower, casting long shadows across the plains. Yana began to feel the first twinges of despair. Hours alone, tied to a tree, exposed and vulnerable, tested even the strongest spirit. She thought of her family again, her mother's gentle hands, her father's strong voice, and her little brother's laughter. She whispered their names softly, a way to keep herself connected to hope. In that quiet moment, she promised herself that she would not give up, that she would survive, no matter how long it took. As the wind shifted, Yana heard a faint rustling nearby. Her heart jumped, but she forced herself to stay still and listen. The sound came again, soft but deliberate, like someone or something was moving carefully through the grass. Her mind raced. Could it be a predator, or could it be a person, maybe someone who might help her? She dared not hope too quickly, but could not help feeling a spark of curiosity and cautious optimism. The sun dipped closer to the horizon, turning the sky into shades of orange and pink. The shadows grew longer, and the temperature began to drop. Yana shivered slightly, hugging herself for warmth. The quiet of the plains became more pronounced, almost eerie, as the day transitioned into evening. She knew she would have to endure the night again, and the thought filled her with both fear and determination. She reminded herself to stay alert, to watch the shadows and listen for every sound. During this long wait, Ayana tried to find ways to distract herself from the fear. She recounted stories her grandmother had told, stories of brave warriors and clever children who outwitted danger. She imagined herself in those stories, using her wits to survive and escape. Her imagination became a tool, helping her endure the loneliness and uncertainty. Even though she was tied to a tree in her mind, she was running free across the plains, strong and unstoppable. Night approached slowly, and the first stars began to appear in the sky. Yana's surroundings became darker and more mysterious, each sound amplified in the stillness. She could hear the distant howls of coyotes and the rustling of leaves as nocturnal creatures moved about. Her body ached with fatigue and her hands were raw from the ropes, but she kept her focus sharp. She knew that survival required both patience and awareness. As the stars sparkled overhead, Ayana thought about the possibility of rescue. Somewhere in the vast plains there might be someone who could help her. She imagined a kind stranger, brave and skilled, riding across the land, noticing her tied to the tree and coming to her aid. The thought, fragile as it was, gave her hope. Hope, she realized, was as important as food or water in moments like this. Without hope, even the strongest person might give up. Hours passed, and Ayana's body grew more tired. She struggled to keep her eyes open but forced herself to remain awake, listening and watching. Her mind replayed every detail of the day, every sound and movement. She knew that staying alert was her best chance at survival. She whispered softly to herself, reminding herself of her family, her lessons, and the bravery she carried within her. The night deepened and the temperature dropped further. Ayana shivered, wrapping her arms around herself, trying to conserve warmth. She realized that survival was not just about strength. It was about endurance, patience, and mental resilience. Each passing hour tested her spirit, but she held on, refusing to let fear or despair take over. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the first hints of dawn appeared. The sky lightened with soft shades of blue and gold. Ayana's hope renewed, stronger than before. She had survived the long hours of uncertainty and danger, and she was still alive. Her mind raced with the thought that perhaps rescue was possible, that her struggle might soon end. She resolved to remain alert, watchful and ready, knowing that each moment brought her closer to safety. Though her body was sore and her spirit tired, Ayana's determination remained unbroken. She had endured the fear, the loneliness, and the uncertainty of being tied to a tree in the wild plains. She had relied on her courage, her memory of her family, and the stories of her ancestors to survive. And now, as the first light of day illuminated the land, she waited, alert and hopeful, ready for whatever might come next. The sun had barely risen above the horizon when Ayana, still tied to the rough tree, heard the distant sound of hooves. Her heart leapt into her throat. Could it be someone coming to help her, or was it another group of strangers, more captors bringing danger? She strained her ears, listening carefully. The hooves were steady, not hurried, and they moved with purpose across the open plains. Ayana's mind raced. She remembered her father's lessons about the land, about listening to the sounds and understanding what they meant. These were not the hurried footsteps of someone chasing. They were deliberate, steady, controlled. Someone was approaching, someone who knew how to move quietly, how to ride with skill. Her hope stirred, fragile but alive. She squinted into the distance and saw the figure of a man on horseback. His hat shaded his face, and a long coat flapped lightly in the morning wind. The horse's movement was smooth and practiced, a rider who had spent years in the wild. Ayana's heart beat faster. Could this be a rescuer? Could this person help her escape the danger that had held her captive for so long? The man slowed his horse as he drew nearer, his eyes scanning the land with a careful, experienced gaze. Iana could see that he was holding something in his hands, a rifle. He dismounted gracefully, his boots making soft thuds on the dry ground. Every movement was precise, showing skill, patience, and awareness. She realized that this man could be the only hope for her survival. She tried to call out, but her voice was weak and hoarse from hours of fear and screaming. She managed a faint whisper, "Help, please." The man's head snapped in her direction. His eyes, sharp and steady, locked onto her. Relief washed over Iana in an overwhelming wave. He was here. He had seen her. She was not alone anymore. The man quickly assessed the situation. He noticed the ropes binding her wrists and ankles, the way she was tied to the sturdy tree, and the danger of the nearby wild plains. He spoke softly, not to startle her. "Don't worry, I'm here to help," he said. Though his voice was calm, it carried authority and reassurance. Yana's lips trembled as she tried to nod, tears filling her eyes. She wanted to believe him, and every instinct told her that this man was her chance to survive. The man scanned the surrounding area before moving closer. He carefully examined the ground, listening for any sound of approaching predators or other humans. Iana noticed his hands were steady, despite the tension of the moment. He knew exactly what he was doing. She felt a small spark of courage ignite inside her. If he could be calm and skilled, perhaps she could find some strength to endure the rest of this ordeal. As he reached the tree, he knelt down and began to work on the ropes. Yana winced as the knots pulled against her skin, but she did not move too much, understanding that he needed to free her without causing injury. The man worked with patience and care, loosening each knot with steady hands. Yana's hope grew with every twist and pull. She whispered a quiet, heartfelt thank you, feeling a sense of trust she had not felt since her capture. Suddenly, a rustle in the tall grass made them both freeze. A pack of coyotes had caught their scent and was moving closer, drawn by the sounds of the morning. Yana's heart pounded violently in her chest. She could see their eyes glinting in the light, and she shivered with fear. But the man remained calm. He raised his rifle slowly, aiming with careful precision, and fired a single shot into the air. The loud crack echoed across the plains. The coyotes yelped in surprise and scattered into the distance. Iana's relief was immense. The danger was not completely gone, but she felt safer with this man by her side. He quickly untied the last knots, freeing her hands and ankles. She rubbed her wrists, sore and raw from the ropes, and blinked rapidly, adjusting to the freedom that had been denied to her for so many hours. She was alive. She was free, at least for now. The man extended his hand to help her to her feet. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she could trust him completely, but something in his calm eyes convinced her. She took his hand, and he steadied her as she stood. Her legs were weak, trembling from hours of being tied, but she felt a surge of gratitude and courage. She realized that this stranger had risked his own safety to save her, and that act of bravery inspired a new strength within her. He offered her a small piece of cloth from his bag to clean her face and hands, and then handed her a waterskin. Yana drank greedily, the cool water soothing her parched throat and giving her body some much-needed relief. She could feel her strength returning slowly, enough to prepare for the journey ahead. The man did not rush her. He understood the importance of giving her time to recover, even for a few minutes. As they prepared to leave, the man mounted his horse first, offering the reins to Iana to climb behind him. She hesitated again, unsure if she could balance herself on the horse after hours of weakness, but he guided her gently, steadying her with his hands. Soon, she was seated safely behind him, holding onto him tightly. The horse began to move, and Iana felt the wind on her face, the sense of freedom returning to her body and spirit. The plains stretched out before them, wide and open, but now they were filled with a sense of possibility instead of fear. Yana could see the hills and valleys she had known as a child, but they no longer seemed threatening. She had survived the wilderness, the fear, and the loneliness, and now, with this stranger's help, she felt a cautious optimism. The man glanced back at her periodically, checking to make sure she was safe and secure. He did not speak much, but his presence was reassuring. Yana noticed that he was skilled not only with the rifle but also in reading the land. He avoided rough terrain, steered the horse around obstacles, and moved with care, demonstrating a deep understanding of the plains and its dangers. She realized that she had never seen anyone handle the land with such confidence and respect. Hours passed as they rode. Yana's fear began to fade gradually, replaced by curiosity and wonder. She asked him quietly about his life, about how he had learned to survive in such a wild and dangerous place. He spoke in calm, measured tones, sharing stories of his travels across the plains, of the people he had met, and of the lessons he had learned from the land itself. Yana listened intently, absorbing every word. His stories were not just entertaining, they were lessons in courage, patience, and wisdom. As the day wore on, Yana felt a growing sense of hope. She realized that she had been given a second chance, a chance to return to her family and to live. She thought about how different the day had begun, tied to a tree, alone, terrified, and how it had changed with the arrival of this brave man. She felt a deep gratitude that went beyond words, a sense that kindness and courage could exist even in the harshest of circumstances. The man noticed her thoughtful silence and smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you realize," he said. "Even in the darkest moments, you kept your mind sharp and your spirit alive. That strength will carry you far." Yana looked at him, her eyes wide with admiration and newfound respect. His words were not just encouragement, they were truth, a reflection of the bravery she had shown in the face of fear. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the plains, they approached a small stream. The man guided the horse carefully to the water, allowing Yana to drink again and refresh herself. The cool water felt like a miracle, washing away some of the fatigue and fear that had gripped her for so long. She felt her strength returning with each sip, and she realized that she was truly alive, truly free, and truly capable of moving forward. The journey back to safety was still ahead, but for the first time in many hours, Yana felt a sense of peace. She was no longer alone, no longer entirely at the mercy of the wild, and no longer without hope. With this man by her side, skilled, brave, and watchful, she could face the plains with courage. She had survived the darkness, and now she was moving toward the light. As they continued to ride, Ayana's thoughts drifted to her family. She imagined the joy of seeing her mother and father again, of hugging her little brother, and of returning to the life she had known. She also thought about the stranger who had saved her life, realizing that she would carry the memory of his bravery with her forever. His presence, his courage, and his kindness had transformed what could have been a story of despair into a story of hope. Night fell again, but this time, the darkness did not terrify her. She rode with confidence, alert but calm, knowing that she was no longer completely alone. The plains were still wild and unpredictable, but with each passing mile, she felt the fear of the past day fade, replaced by gratitude, courage, and determination. By the time the first stars appeared in the night sky, Ayana understood something profound. Survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about holding on to hope, trusting in courage, and accepting help when it came. She had faced fear and uncertainty, endured loneliness, and relied on her wits, but she had also learned the power of kindness and bravery in others. She was stronger now, more aware, and more prepared for the challenges that might come. As she sat behind the man on the horse, feeling the rhythm of the animal beneath her, Yana whispered a quiet promise to herself. She would survive, she would return home, and she would remember this day and the lessons it had taught her for the rest of her life. The sun had dipped low in the sky, painting the plains in shades of orange, gold, and red. Yana clung tightly to the stranger on the horse, her heart still pounding from the terror she had endured hours before. Every sound of the plains seemed amplified, the rustling of the grass, the distant calls of birds returning to their nests, the faint footsteps of small animals. The man riding in front of her remained alert, scanning the horizon with practiced eyes. His calmness was contagious, and slowly, Yana's racing heart began to steady. The terrain around them became rougher. Rocks and uneven ground made the horse's footing more difficult, and the tall grass gave way to scattered bushes and low trees. The man guided the horse carefully, adjusting his weight and pace to keep them balanced. Yana felt every movement, every shift of the horse beneath her. It was exhausting but also reassuring. She realized that their survival depended not just on speed but on caution and skill. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed across the plains. A bird of prey swooped down, startled by their movement. Yana's pulse quickened again. The plains were full of life, full of potential danger and full of unpredictability. She realized that every moment was a test of patience and awareness. The man glanced at her briefly and gave a small nod, as if to say, "Stay calm, we will get through this." That silent reassurance was enough to steady her trembling hands. As they rode, Ayana began to notice small signs in the land that she had overlooked before, tracks in the dirt, broken twigs, distant animal calls. The man pointed them out, explaining softly how to read the signs of the wilderness. "Every sound, every mark tells a story," he said. "The land speaks if you know how to listen." Yana listened carefully, soaking in the knowledge. She felt a growing respect for the man and a deeper appreciation for the plains she had once called home. Hours passed and the light of the setting sun grew dimmer. Shadows stretched across the land, creating shapes that seemed alive in the fading light. Yana felt a chill run down her spine. The darkness of night was approaching, and with it, the dangers of the wild. Predators became bolder after sunset, and the plains could hide threats in every shadow. She shivered and held on tighter to the man's waist, trying to stay calm. The man noticed her unease and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "Don't worry," he said. "I've been through these plains many times. We're not out of danger yet, but we'll make it." His confidence was steadying, and Ayana drew strength from it. She realized that trust was essential in moments like these. She had survived so far because she had remained alert and cautious, but now she understood that she could also survive because someone else was willing to fight for her. Suddenly, a rustle in the bushes ahead made both of them tense. The man raised his rifle, moving silently but quickly to assess the situation. Yana's heart thumped violently. She had been through fear before, but now, riding behind him, she felt the tension of waiting, the suspense of not knowing what might come next. The rustle grew louder, and a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the dim light. A small pack of coyotes had noticed them, drawn by the movement and smell. The man did not panic. He raised the rifle carefully and fired a single shot into the ground just ahead of the coyotes. The loud crack echoed through the plains. The coyotes yelped in surprise and scattered, disappearing into the shadows. Yana exhaled slowly, relief washing over her. She realized how fortunate she was to have such a skilled rescuer, someone who could face the dangers of the wild without hesitation. Once the immediate danger had passed, the man guided the horse carefully toward a small clearing. The horse slowed and Ayana could finally breathe more easily. She stretched her arms, still aching from the long ride, and looked at the man. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." He nodded, his expression calm but kind. "You did well," he replied. "You stayed strong, you kept hope alive, and that matters more than anything." The clearing was quiet, bathed in the last light of the sun. Yana could see the beauty of the plains in a new way, the soft glow of the grasses, the gentle sway of trees, the distant mountains standing tall against the sky. For the first time since her capture, she felt a sense of peace, a feeling that danger might finally be behind her. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth of the evening sun wash over her. But the plains are never completely safe. As darkness fell, Ayana realized that their journey was far from over. The man led the horse carefully along a narrow trail, using the fading light to guide them. Each step required attention, each movement needed precision. She held on tightly, her muscles sore but her spirit growing stronger with every mile. The fear that had gripped her earlier now coexisted with hope and determination. As night fully descended, the stars began to appear, sparkling above like tiny lanterns. The man guided the horse toward a small stream where they could rest and drink. The cool water refreshed both Ayana and the horse. She cupped her hands, letting the liquid flow into her mouth, feeling her strength slowly return. The night air was cooler now, and she wrapped herself more tightly around the man to stay warm. She realized how vulnerable she had been just hours ago, tied to a tree, and how much her life had changed in such a short time. While they rested briefly by the stream, Ayana thought about her family. She imagined her mother's worried face, her father's strong presence, and her little brother running to her. The thought of seeing them again gave her courage. She also thought about the man who had saved her. His bravery, skill, and calmness in the face of danger had been her lifeline. She understood that heroism could exist quietly, in acts of courage that often went unnoticed by the world. After a short rest, the man guided the horse along the stream, moving carefully but steadily. The moon rose, casting silver light across the plains. Shadows danced across the grass, creating the illusion of movement, but Ayana's fear was less now. She trusted the man and she trusted herself. Her body was still tired, her arms and legs sore, but her mind was clear. She knew that she had survived so far because she had stayed alert, listened carefully, and held onto hope. The man spoke occasionally, pointing out landmarks and giving gentle instructions. "Stay quiet," he said at one point. "Not everything in the night is visible, but we can avoid danger if we move carefully." Ayana nodded, absorbing every word. She realized that survival required more than strength. It required awareness, patience, and cooperation. She had learned that in the past hours, and now she was putting it into practice. Hours passed, and the plains seemed endless. Ayana felt the fatigue pressing on her body, but her spirit remained strong. She kept her eyes open, alert for any sign of danger, and followed the man's lead. They moved carefully through the night, the rhythm of the horse's hooves grounding her in the moment. She thought about how fragile life could be and how precious the chance to live truly was. Finally, just as the moon began to set, they saw the faint outline of trees and a small clearing in the distance. The man slowed the horse, guiding them gently toward what seemed like safety. Ayana felt a surge of hope and relief. After the fear, the uncertainty, and the danger, they were approaching a place where she could finally rest, recover, and eventually return home. As they entered the clearing, Ayana realized something profound. She had survived the wild, survived fear, and survived alone until help arrived. But she had also learned the value of trust, courage, and hope. The plains were still dangerous, but she had proven that determination, patience, and belief in help could carry her through even the darkest moments. She looked at the man, grateful beyond words. He had risked himself to save her, and his calm presence had guided her through the chaos. She whispered softly, "Thank you for everything." He nodded, giving her a small, reassuring smile. "You're stronger than you know," he said. "Remember that." Ayana felt tears welling in her eyes, not of fear, but of relief, gratitude, and a deep sense of awe. She had faced the worst moments of her life and had come through alive. And now, with the danger behind her and the possibility of returning to her family ahead, she felt a renewed sense of hope and courage that she had never known before. Ayana stepped cautiously off the horse, her legs stiff and sore from the long ride through the plains. The man who had rescued her guided the horse to a safe spot, patting its neck gently. Gianna took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the fresh morning air. After hours of fear, danger, and uncertainty, she finally felt the first taste of true relief. The night had passed, and the sun was rising higher, spilling golden light across the land, making everything look brighter and safer. She looked around the small clearing, taking in the familiar shapes of trees, grasses, and rocks. Even in the wild, there were signs of life and safety. Gianna's mind wandered back to the terrifying hours she had spent tied to the tree, alone and helpless. She shivered slightly, remembering the fear, the loneliness, and the cold. But she also felt pride in herself for having survived, for keeping hope alive when everything seemed lost. That survival, she realized, had given her a new strength she had never known before. The man knelt down beside her and spoke softly. "You've been through a lot," he said. "But you stayed strong, and that is why you're here now." Gianna nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She wanted to say more, to express the gratitude and relief that surged through her, but words felt too small for the moment. Instead, she simply smiled, a smile of pure relief and appreciation. Slowly, they began walking together toward the distant hills, where Ayana's village might be visible. She held her head high, her body still weak but her spirit lighter. Every step was a reminder that she had survived, that she had faced fear and uncertainty and had come through alive. The plains, once terrifying and hostile, now felt like a place she could navigate, a place she could respect and understand. She had learned lessons here that she would carry with her forever. As they moved, Ayana asked the man quietly about his own journey. Who was he, and why had he risked his life to save her? The man smiled faintly. "I've seen too many lives lost to the dangers of these plains," he said. "When someone is in trouble and I can help, I do. It's as simple as that." Ayana listened carefully, absorbing his words. She realized that courage came in many forms, not just in grand gestures, but in quiet acts of bravery, in choosing to do the right thing even when it was dangerous. Hours passed, and the landscape began to change. The plains gave way to familiar hills and small groves of trees. The wind carried the scent of smoke and cooking fires from the village. Gianna's heart leapt in her chest. Her home was near, and soon she would see her family again. The thought of reuniting with them brought both joy and a lingering sense of worry. Would they recognize her? Would they forgive her for being gone? But these thoughts were soon replaced by hope, the hope that she had survived and that her family would welcome her back. As they approached the village, people began to notice them. Gianna recognized faces, the familiar shapes of her friends and neighbors, and the sight made her heart swell. Her mother came running toward her, calling her name, her voice trembling with fear and relief. Gianna broke into a run, stumbling slightly, but the man caught her gently. She threw her arms around her mother, crying tears of relief, joy, and gratitude. Her mother held her tightly, whispering over and over, "You're safe, you're safe." Her father appeared shortly after, his expression a mix of worry and immense relief. He lifted Ayana into his arms, holding her as if he would never let go. Her little brother ran to her as well, laughing and crying at the same time, overwhelmed with happiness that his sister had returned. Gianna felt the warmth of her family surrounding her, the love and safety she had been missing for so many hours. She realized in that moment that no danger, no fear could erase the bond she shared with her family. The man who had rescued her stood slightly apart, watching quietly. Gianna turned to him, tears still in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. The man shook his head, smiling. "No thanks needed," he replied. "Seeing you safe is enough." His words touched Ayana deeply. She understood that true heroism did not always seek reward or recognition. It existed in the courage to act, to protect, and to help others without expectation. Over the next few days, Ayana began to recover from the ordeal. Her body healed slowly, the marks on her wrists fading and her strength returning. But more importantly, her mind and spirit healed as well. She spoke often with her family about what had happened, recounting the fear, the loneliness, and the hope that had carried her through. They listened, sometimes with tears, sometimes with wonder, and each conversation reinforced the lesson she had learned, the importance of courage, patience, trust, and the power of hope. Ayanna also remembered the man who had saved her. She thought of him often, imagining his quiet bravery, his calm presence, and his skill in navigating the wild plains. She realized that his actions had changed her life, giving her a second chance, and she promised herself she would never forget him. Even if she never saw him again, his courage would remain a part of her, a reminder of what it meant to be brave and kind. As time passed, Ayanna's story became known among her people. They spoke of her survival, the dangers she had faced, and the courage she had shown. Children listened in awe, parents nodded in respect, and elders shared lessons about the strength of spirit and the importance of hope. Ayanna's experience became a story of resilience, a story that reminded everyone that even in the darkest moments, courage, patience, and help from others could turn despair into hope. She also began to see the world differently. The plains, once simply a backdrop for daily life, now held deeper meaning. She understood the power of nature, the balance of danger and beauty, and the lessons that came from observing, listening, and respecting the land. Every rustling leaf, every distant howl, every gentle breeze carried a story, and Ayanna had learned to read those stories carefully. Through it all, Ayanna grew stronger, wiser, and more confident. She returned to her daily life, but she did so with a new sense of awareness and purpose. She helped her family more diligently, shared her knowledge of the plains with her friends, and carried the lessons of courage and hope into every action. Her experience had changed her, not just in survival but in character. She had learned that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act even while afraid. The man who had saved her remained a quiet presence in her memory, a symbol of hope and courage. Ayanna often thought of him when she faced challenges, drawing strength from the memory of his calmness, skill, and willingness to help. She realized that heroes could appear in unexpected forms, at unexpected times, and that their impact could last far beyond the moments of danger. Years later, Ayanna would tell her own children the story of her survival. She would speak of fear and hope, of danger and courage, and of the stranger who had risked everything to save her life. She would teach them the lessons she had learned, to remain calm in the face of fear, to trust in courage, to respect the land, and to believe in the kindness of others. Her story would live on, not just as a tale of survival, but as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Ayanna's life continued, shaped by her experiences and strengthened by her survival. She grew into a young woman of resilience, wisdom, and compassion. She cherished her family, respected the land, and carried the memory of the plains and her rescue deep within her heart. The terror she had faced would never be forgotten, but neither would the courage, hope, and kindness that had allowed her to live and thrive. In the quiet evenings, when the sun set over the hills and the wind whispered through the trees, Ayanna would think of the plains, the tree where she had been tied, and the man who had saved her. She would remember the fear, the hope, the courage, and the relief. And she would smile knowing that life, even in its most dangerous moments, held the power of redemption, kindness, and survival. Ayanna had been through the unimaginable, yet she had emerged stronger, braver, and more aware of the world around her. Her story was no longer just a tale of fear. It was a story of hope, resilience, and the quiet heroism that could change a life forever. She had survived the wild, survived fear, and returned to the warmth of family and community. And as she looked toward the future, she knew she carried the strength of her experience, the lessons of courage, and the memory of a stranger's bravery with her always.